The evening sky glows a dull orange as I stand on my porch, watching the day fade into night. It's a Thursday, the kind where the week feels too long and the weekend too far. As I lean against the wooden railing, lost in thoughts of the workday's trials, I hear the hesitant shuffling of feet on my driveway. I look up to see Mrs. Harper, my next-door neighbor, a woman of stern demeanor and sharp eyes, approaching me with a pace that suggests reluctance. "John," she calls out, her voice wavering slightly, a rare crack in her otherwise composed facade. I straighten up, surprised. "Mrs. Harper, everything all right?" She reaches the porch, takes a deep breath, and looks me straight in the eye. "I need to tell you something important," she begins, her hands nervously clasped together. "It's about your wife, Diane." A chill runs down my spine. Diane is currently on a business trip, or so she said. "What about her?" I ask, my voice steady despite the growing unease. Mrs. Harper swallows hard, her eyes filled with a mix of sympathy and fear. "I've been holding this back for far too long, and I can't do it anymore. It's my son, Ethan. I caught him and Diane together in her bedroom. I'm so sorry, John." The world tilts on its axis. My heart pounds against my ribcage, anger and betrayal intertwining like a venomous vine. "When?" My voice is a low growl, barely recognizable to my own ears. "A few weeks ago. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I couldn't find the courage. Ethan begged me not to, and I..." Her voice trails off, lost to the sound of my blood roaring in my ears. For a moment, I can only stare at her, the shadows of the evening stretching long and ominous between us. Then, slowly, a cold resolve settles over me. "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Harper. If you'll excuse me, I need some time to think." She nods, her face pale and drawn. "Of course, John. Again, I'm so sorry." With that, she turns and walks away, leaving me alone with the crumbling edifice of my marriage. The next few days are a blur of rage and cold calculation. I confront Diane over the phone, and her tearful admissions only fuel my fury. The betrayal cuts deep, but it also clears the path for retribution. I decide to ruin her as she has ruined me. I start by freezing our joint accounts and cancelling her credit cards. Her pleas fall on deaf ears, my heart has hardened against her. I contact a lawyer and initiate the divorce proceedings, presenting the evidence of her infidelity. The community whispers, and her reputation begins to crumble. Diane returns to find her belongings in the driveway, the locks changed. She calls, she cries, she begs, but I am resolute. I watch from the window as she struggles to salvage pieces of her life, but I feel nothing. 3 weeks have passed since Diane's departure, and the silence of the house now rings louder than any argument we ever had. Yet, there's a plan brewing in the shadow of this newfound solitude, a plan that demands precision and a cold heart. I've never been one for half measures, and this revenge will be thorough. On a brisk Saturday morning, I step into the crisp air with a purpose. My first stop is the local print shop where I meet with a friend who owes me a few favors. We sit in the back room, the smell of ink and paper heavy in the air. I need a flyer designed, I tell him, sliding a USB drive across the table. Something eye-catching. He raises an eyebrow but nods as he plugs the drive into his computer. "What's it for?" "A sale." "A big one," I reply cryptically. He doesn't need to know it's not just any sale, but a sale of Diane's prized possessions, her designer clothes, her jewelry, the things she valued more than our vows. The design is sleek, professional, and in less than an hour, I have several hundred flyers in my hands. I drive around town, distributing them in cafes, boutiques, and on community boards. Diane's social circle will see them by the end of the day, of that I'm certain. As the sun sets, I return home, my next plan already forming. I sit down at my computer, drafting an email to Diane's employer. My fingers hover over the keyboard. With every word, I weigh the potential fallout, but the sting of betrayal propels me forward. I am writing to inform you of an unfortunate truth regarding one of your employees, Diane. her personal conduct has recently come under scrutiny, and it has come to my attention that it may affect her professional responsibilities. I hit send before I can second-guess my decision, the digital deed drifting into the ether, potentially detonating Diane's career as it had once detonated our marriage. That night, I hardly sleep, my mind alive with the possibilities of tomorrow. The phone rings early in the morning, jolting me from a restless doze. It's Ethan, his voice shaky, desperate. "Mr. John, please, we need to talk. I know what I did was wrong, but I didn't mean to ruin everything. Can we meet?" There's a pause, a moment where I consider hanging up, but curiosity gets the better of me. Fine. The park, 30 minutes. We meet under the grey sweep of dawn. Ethan is a mess, his eyes red, his posture defeated. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he starts, his voice pleading. "I was stupid, and I'm sorry." I stare at him, my gaze unyielding. "Your apology doesn't change the past, Ethan. What's done is done." "But what are you going to do?" he asks, a trace of fear creeping into his voice. "Whatever it takes to find peace," I respond, turning away from him, leaving him standing alone, a solitary figure dwarfed by the sprawling emptiness of the park. As I walk away, the first drops of rain begin to fall, the sky opening up as if to wash away the sins of the past. But some stains are too deep, and as I head home, I know that my path of retribution has only just begun. The real game, my meticulously crafted revenge, is set to unfold, and nothing will stop me now. The morning of the auction arrives with a grey, overcast sky, mirroring the turmoil that churns within me. The items laid out for auction are more than just belongings, they are a testament to betrayal, each piece a shard of a shattered marriage. As people start to gather, I stand back, observing from a distance, my presence unnoticed among the curious and the bargain hunters. I spot familiar faces, friends of Diane, her colleagues, and even a few distant relatives. Their whispers fill the air, their eyes wide as they take in the array of luxury items and personal treasures on display. The auctioneer begins his call, his voice booming over the crowd, and the first item is brought forward, a beautiful, antique necklace I had given Diane on our 10th anniversary. "Do I hear 200? 200, thank you. Now 3? 300 from the lady in the back." The bids climb, and with each nod and wave of a hand, a piece of Diane's world is stripped away. I feel a grim satisfaction, but it's hollow, eaten away by the cold fire of vengeance burning within. As the auction progresses, I notice a tall, broad-shouldered man making his way through the crowd. It's Michael, Diane's brother. His eyes scan the crowd until they land on me. He approaches, his brow furrowed. "John, this is low, even for you," he hisses as he draws near. "Selling her things like this, in public? What are you trying to prove?" I meet his gaze, unflinching. "That actions have consequences, Michael. She made her choice, and now she lives with it." He shakes his head, his voice low and tense. "You think this will make you feel better? You think this will end it? It's already ended, Michael." "This is just closure," I reply, my voice as cold as the breeze that whips around us. He looks about to say more, but instead shakes his head and walks away. I turn back to the auction, watching as another item goes under the hammer, a painting we bought on a trip to Italy, full of color and life, now just another transaction. As the final item is sold, a sense of emptiness settles over me. The crowd begins to disperse, their murmurs and footfalls fading into the distance. I linger, the last to leave, the weight of the morning's events heavy on my shoulders. Driving home, the house feels emptier than ever. The echo of the auctioneer's voice haunts the quiet corners of each room. I sit in the silence, contemplating my next move. My phone buzzes, a message from an unknown number. "You've made your point, John. Can we please just talk?" It's Diane. Her words, once able to stir my heart, now seem like distant echoes. I type a response, my fingers steady. There's nothing left to say. "You had your chance to speak." I send the message and turn off the phone, cutting off any further communication. As I look around the hollow shell of what used to be our home, I realize the auction hasn't brought the satisfaction I craved. The revenge feels incomplete, hollow. There's more to be done, more plans to set in motion. My journey of retribution is far from over, the deeper game is just beginning. As autumn strips the trees of their leaves, the bare branches seem to echo the starkness of my own life. The house, once filled with laughter and love, now reverberates with the silence of solitude. The auction, while satisfying in the moment, did little to quell the burning rage within me. My revenge must be complete, must be final. I've spent weeks plotting, planning each step with meticulous detail. Now, as the chill of November sets in, I'm ready to deliver the final blow. It's not just about punishing Diane anymore, it's about obliterating every trace of the betrayal that has consumed my life. Early one cold morning, I make a call to an old friend from my college days, someone disconnected enough from my current life to remain under the radar. Tom, I need a favor, a big one. It's time to expose some very dirty laundry. Tom agrees to help without hesitation, knowing only that my cause is justified by deep personal pain. He's skilled in digital warfare, capable of infiltrating and exposing with a few clicks what would otherwise remain hidden. By noon, Diane's private communications, emails, messages, all documenting not just her infidelity but a series of lies and manipulations involving her workplace, are leaked to the most influential gossip columns and news outlets. The digital footprint is untraceable, the impact immediate and devastating. As the news breaks, I sit back and watch the chaos unfold from the shadows. Her professional life crumbles as her employers and colleagues turn their backs on her, disgusted by the deceit and manipulation. Her social circle disintegrates, friends distancing themselves from the scandal. Diane is left alone, ostracized by those she once considered allies. But the real revelation comes later that day. I receive an unexpected visit from Mrs. Harper, the woman who first revealed the sordid truth to me. She looks nervous, her eyes darting around as if afraid of being overheard. "John, there's something else you need to know," she begins, her voice trembling. "It wasn't just Diane and Ethan. I was involved too." I stare at her, stunned. "Involved? What do you mean?" She takes a deep breath, steeling herself. "I manipulated Ethan into seducing Diane. I was angry at you, at her, at everything that happened between our families years ago. I thought I could stir trouble, maybe get a bit of revenge myself. I never thought it would go this far. Deception layers upon deception, and a cold laugh escapes me. And now you come to confess? Why? Guilt? Yes, she admits, her face pale. And fear. I've seen what you've done to Diane. I don't want that for my son, for me. Your confession changes nothing for Diane, I say with icy calmness. But for you and Ethan, consider this your warning. Leave. Disappear. If I see either of you again, the consequences will be much worse. She nods, clearly terrified, and leaves quickly. I close the door behind her, a sense of hollow victory washing over me. Diane's life is in ruins, her deceit exposed, and her accomplices driven away in fear. Days turn into weeks, and as the dust settles, the victory feels more Pyrrhic than triumphant. My revenge is complete, yet there's no peace. The house is quieter than ever, the echoes of the past now silenced completely. One evening, as I sit by the fireplace, watching the flames consume the logs, a realization dawns on me. In seeking revenge, I've stripped everything down to the bone, not just for Diane, but for myself as well. There's no joy in this solitude, no triumph in the silence. I leave the house behind before the winter sets in, driving away from the town, from the memories, from the ghosts of a life that once was. The final act of my revenge is to disappear, to start anew, far from the ruins of a past too painful to inhabit. Diane, Mrs. Harper, Ethan, they are all chapters of a story I no longer wish to read. As the distance grows, the weight of betrayal and revenge finally begins to lift, the road ahead uncertain but unburdened.